Hi guys and welcome to another Hero of the Week. Now this week's hero is Susanna Reid of Good Morning Britain. She did a wonderful job as a journalist holding Prime Minister Boris Johnson to account. Now it must be remembered that Johnson has refused to give interviews to the programme for months and now he has only agreed to sit down and answer questions. Well, how did it go? It didn't go very well for him. Here they're talking about the cost of living crisis, and Susanna brings up the example of a woman who's 77 years old who has been cutting back on meals in order to pay her bills. Just a caveat here, I can't show you the video as ITV are very strict on copyright issues, but I will let you listen to Johnson being taken apart. Well done, Susanna.
Give you some examples because we get emails all the time, Prime Minister, about this. You have said that individuals have to make choices about what they spend their money on. You're on record as saying that, OK? And I want to ask you then about a number of our viewers who have got in touch with us about the choices that they're making. Elsie is 77. She's a widow and she's a pensioner who lives in a council house. She receives a pension of £170 a week. Her energy bills have gone, get this, from £17 a month to £85 a month.
Yeah.
She will pay an additional £816 a year. To cut down on spending, Prime Minister, Elsie has now resorted to eating one meal a day. She's 77 years old. She's losing weight. She goes to the supermarket at the end of the day to buy yellow sticker discounted items. She gets up early in the morning to use her Freedom bus pass to stay on buses all day to avoid using energy at home. What else should Elsie cut back on, in your opinion?
I don't want Elsie to cut back on anything. Let's talk about Elsie and what we're doing. And just to remind you that the 24-hour Freedom bus pass was something that I actually introduced, just parenthetically.
Marvellous. So
What? So even here, Boris Johnson is lying. Boris Johnson cannot tell that he's been told a story, a heartbreaking story, and he even lies in his response. Boris Johnson is talking about this, the Concessionary Bus Pass Travel Act 2007. Not when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. 2007, this bus pass was brought in for people, elderly people, to have free access to travel. So even here, Boris Johnson is lying. Really, does he have a limit, this guy? Anyway.
Elsie should be grateful to you for her bus pass. But what else should she cut back on?
There are plenty of things that more that...
But let me just stop for a moment. This whole idea that she's using the bus pass in order to get on the bus in order to avoid staying at home where it's cold. And I covered this before in another video where there was an elderly man who was using the bus to keep warm. Because if he stayed at home, he'd have to heat his home. Maybe the home, apart from the cost of heating the home, maybe the home is old and it's drafty. So he was staying on the bus in order to keep warm. And this old lady is doing the same thing. And Boris Johnson's response is, but I'm the one who brought in the free bus pass. See? Isn't that wonderful? How disconnected he is from reality. The fact that let's park for a moment that he lied about when this bus pass was brought in. But the fact that elderly people are having to rely on public transport not to get around, but to keep friggin' warm. This is insane. And Boris Johnson just completely ignores that reality. Tries to spin it as some sort of Tory positive or Boris Johnson benefit.
We are doing. So what we want to do is make sure that we have people who are in particular hardship looked after by their councils. So we're putting much more money into local councils. We have the particular payments for to help elderly people in particular with the cost of heating. But look.
See, the problem here was, what more can Elsie do? Not what have you done? What are you planning to do in the future? What can Elsie do? Because Elsie probably has applied for everything. Whatever she's entitled to, she's got. I'm pretty sure, there are elderly charities that make sure elderly people are able to access the benefits that are available to them. Now, if Elsie has applied for all of those and she still has to ride the bus in order to keep warm, and she has to eat one meal a day in order to save money to pay for her bills, what can she do? Because obviously the government have not done anything more for her. Otherwise, she would have applied for those benefits, and she wouldn't be relying on a freaking bus to keep warm and cutting back on meals.
Susanna,
she already qualifies for that.
And I'm going to accept.
I'm asking you now, what does Elsie cut back on now?
I don't want Elsie to have to cut back on anything, and we will make sure.
But Prime Minister, her energy bills have gone up to £85 a month.
And the best answer is to help her abate the cost of energy as we are, but also
through a loan that she has to pay back?
To make sure there's a direct cut in her council tax as a result of what we're doing, plus the
she doesn't qualify for the council tax rebate as her home
plus
comes
the winter
under
fuel allowance. There are measures.
She doesn't qualify for that. So Boris Johnson, yeah, she can benefit from the council tax cut, but she doesn't qualify for that. What more can she do? And this reminds me of Martin Lewis, the money-saving expert, who came out recently and said, I have no more tools for people. The responsibility is now the government. The responsibility is always the government's. But he said, I can't help people anymore. I run out of tools. Switching supplier, cutting back on this, looking around for a better offer. There's nothing more we can do. The government need to intervene and provide real support for people. Boris Johnson doesn't want to do that. Obviously, Boris Johnson is completely disconnected from this reality, because he's saying when the fact that an elderly person is using a bus in order to keep warm, his response was, well, isn't this wonderful? I brought it in, which was a bloody lie.
Measures that we put in place to help people. But I'm not going to pretend
you can't say anything to help
I'm not going to
Elsie,
pretend no, because what we are doing is making sure that we take the steps now to invest in our energy supply. You'll get back to your point about the energy companies, to ensure that we have the supply for the medium and the long term.
I'm so sorry, Elsie. The medium and long term doesn't help Elsie.
The medium and the long term does not help Elsie. She needs support now. There's no point telling her, okay, you're cutting back on a meal and you're riding the bus in order to keep warm. But don't worry, in the next 10 to 15 years, we'll sort this out. This lady, she's 77. I hope she lives for a long time. But there's no point telling her you have to wait 10, 15 years when the Conservatives have decided to invest in looking after... Now, look, I have to raise this point. This is Boris Johnson's voting record when it comes to welfare and benefits. And it says here, almost always voted against paying higher benefits over longer periods for those unable to work due to illness or disability. 7 votes against, and he abstained once. When it comes to the bedroom tax, Boris Johnson was absent for the vote. So he didn't vote for it, didn't vote against it, but he was absent. And then almost always voted for a reduction in spending on welfare benefits. 19 votes for, 4 times he was absent. 0 votes against. So Boris Johnson does not care about people like Elsie. He'll say that he does, but he doesn't care. And, he hasn't turned over a new leaf recently. He hasn't decided, I actually start to care about people now. He hasn't, he doesn't, and he will not. And I hope people remember that when they come out and vote on Thursday. But I want to say thanks to Susanna for being our hero of the week, for holding Boris Johnson to account. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.